so he could still be in bed. I don't know, but we can start if you want. I sleep it in, you know. Yeah, I don't have anything. It's up to you if you want to go ahead and start the meeting.
Yes.
If you would,
like to
there, if you would mute your phones though.
Good morning,
Good
everyone.
morning, everyone. Sorry
Sorry for the
for
delay.
the delay.
I'd like
I'd
to
like to
call us
all to the special call to meeting, the budget for the fiscal year 2021. At this time, I would like to, unless there's any other announcements, I'll turn this over to City Manager David Milliron. Mr. Milliron.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All right, the city clerk will deliver personally to you all today a copy of the proposed 2021 Danville City budget. As you know, we're in unprecedented times as no previous infectious disease outbreak, including the Spanish flu, has impacted the economy as powerfully as the COVID-19 pandemic. The U.S. employment rate hit 14.7% in April 2020, the worst since the Depression era. The Bureau of Labor Statistics last week reported 20.5 million people abruptly lost their jobs in April, which wiped out a decade of employment gains in a single month. And the speed and magnitude of the loss defies comparison. It is roughly double what the nation experienced during the Great Recession from 2007 to 2009, which took the city of Danville's budget 5 years to recover. The Commonwealth has been hit equally as hard, with 700,000 Kentuckians having filed for unemployment benefits. Kentucky is a manufacturing state, so when large manufacturers and industrials closed or throttled their plants, the Commonwealth's unemployment numbers soared faster than other states. Danville is a regional hub for jobs, and economic data suggests there are more than 2,000 currently unemployed in Boyle County alone. Kentucky cities, as you know, are not empowered to levy income or sales taxes, and therefore must depend on revenues generated essentially from licenses and property. Occupational and business license taxes, insurance premium taxes, and property taxes are usually the most important revenue sources for cities. Given the high unemployment rate and the number of businesses and industry that laid off or furloughed workers, reliable revenue sources needed to provide critical city services is a host of unknowns, and therefore this budget is forced to predict an uncertain future. Until I know the magnitude of the coronavirus pandemic on Danville's revenue streams, I foreshadow any adopted budget to be a work in progress that will need to be regularly revisited to make necessary adjustments to maintain critical services. Here's a snapshot of where we are right now based on estimations on our general fund resources. This is where we get our revenue. And as you can see, I put FY 2020 estimated. That estimated is actually lower than your fiscal year 2020 budgeted. The reason behind that is because we're not going to materialize what we budgeted for fiscal year 2020. This was obviously your July 1, 2019 budget that goes through the end of June of this year. And since
David,
coronavirus, we have already started to see downturn.
I can't see beyond the last paragraph. You got another page you want to put up? There we go. There we go. All right. Thank you.
Thanks for that. I'm looking at my screen, but you're seeing something else. I apologize. Thank you for that.
That's okay.
All right. So you see the estimated, which I said is actually trended downward. It's different than your actual budgeted amounts. That's because when folks aren't working, they're unable to pay occupational license fees, your payroll taxes, and your net profit taxes, and everything has been deferred. So our overall revenue to the city is already significantly down. And so what we did is we have re-benchmarked what we anticipate we will bring in. It is anticipated, not anticipated, we will be restating our FY 2020 budget with a year end, which actually account for where we stand. But these are the numbers that we anticipate or project we should be at. And then we have then further anticipated hits to our bottom line based on initial projections and the fact that the social distancing will be in place well into 2021 based on state guidance and other economic and budget forecasters. So overall, we are looking at potentially right now a 14.7% drop from estimated. Now that number is actually a lot greater because if I had listed your budgeted, you'll see that that number, that 14.7% is actually greater. But we're trying to estimate actuals as close as we can. Generally, when we cut a budget, we'll do March, and then we'll project out. This year's a little different because every week seems to be a little bit more bleak news. Looking at occupational tax fees, obviously this is the largest portion of where we're getting revenue. And you'll see that the fiscal year 2020 budget was 9.9 million. So as I mentioned, we've already gone and reduced that estimate downward to 8.595 million. So you see the drastic difference between 9.9 million and the 8.595. So that's money this far into the budget that's not going to materialize by June 30th. So that's why as soon as the pandemic hit, we took immediate quick action to shut down all spending, all capital, all unnecessary expenditures. So this is a 7.5% reduction, and that's what I meant, that it's compounded more. So if I go back up here to show you, when you look at our downward trend, that 14.7 is actually higher. When we look at the overall budget, we're looking at a further reduction of about 6.25 million that's going to be realized for the fiscal year 2021 budget. And that's a 32.7% drop over the current budget revenues that we anticipate will not be realized unless people return to work at pre-pandemic levels. That's the key. For every person unemployed, we're going to take a hit. So it's very important that at some point we recover and folks are back to work because you have limited revenue streams there.
David, I'm sorry if I can interject a second. Mr. Mayor, would you mind muting your microphone? We're getting a lot of feedback from your computer for whatever reason.
Okay, let me see how I can do that. How about now?
No, you're if you muted it on your computer, then I think we'll be okay. Something that's we're getting a double feedback from you. If you're on your phone, do you know where the mute button is? There you go. Thank you.
He doesn't know, but I muted him. Okay. All right, now taking a look at our business net profits. These have reduced from 1.2 million to 840,000 due to business closures. So we're projecting a 30% cut on that. The insurance premium fees As you're aware, the commission had raised this 2 percentage points in February 2020 to increase public safety salaries. Danville anticipated roughly a $550,000 increase with the fee set at 10%. However, due to COVID-19 causing a reduction in policies, an increase in bankruptcies, and anticipated additional bankruptcies, we budgeted fiscal year 2020 downward from 2.2 million to an expected 2.1 million, which is a 4.5% drop. And we forecasted the fiscal 2021, the upcoming year, to 2.425 million. Keep in mind, all proceeds that are coming from the fiscal year 2020 figures were budgeted over and above towards the public safety salaries. So any gains that are realized are being estimated and put towards what we said we would, which was public safety salaries and benefits. On the utility side, this is a fee the utility enterprise pays to the general fund to pay for government services. That's all of our overhead, our payroll, our legal, audit services, postage, etc. And so there's a formula that calculates this fee that can be found on the non-departmental page of the utility budget that we're distributing. And as I have been instructed, a USDA rate study actually determined that formula, and it is governmental accounting standards that allows us to be able to reimburse that account. That said, we're going to get into a little bit more bleaker numbers in just a moment. On the intergovernmental side, we currently have an interlocal agreement for the collection of occupational license fees and net profits with Boyle County. You're aware that the commission took action to cancel that effective December 31st, which means starting January 1, we will be collecting those taxes. So we will realize a small net profit of 64,277 over what we were paying. So basically, we're paying it's a savings, if you will, of just more than 64,000. We've also eliminated from the budget $50,000 that Danville's been paying to Boyle County to cover 50% of the salary and benefits for its solid waste director. Danville residents already are taxed by the county and are entitled to utilize its solid waste transfer stations and recycling centers as part of its service delivery. So that line item was cut from the budget. We look back at the annual reports, and we're not receiving any additional services over and above what is the tax is paying for. And moreover, the city has also signed over its recycling and litter collection grants to the county. All right, this is a tough one. This is the community agencies that historically have been relying on tax dollar money in order to operate. We have 20 agencies that requested a combined $275,174 in funds, including 2 new agencies not previously funded. This represents a 38.1% year-over-year increase in requested funding. Right now, all requested funds are held in abatement until the full impact of the COVID-19 pandemic is understood to the city revenues. What that means in simple English is we have not funded them in the proposed budget, and that if the only mechanism to fund them right now, based on the decreases, is to take that out of your fund balance, or for us to find additional cuts within the budget. Meanwhile, in discussions with the mayor, he had informed me that the airport board could forgo a year without funding. I believe that was about 15,000. The planning and zoning director stated that he could adjust his budget to sustain some additional proposed cuts. So we eliminated about a third of that. And the Economic Development Partnership Funds, I informed them on Friday that at this point, 100% of those are also in abatement, pending a revised contract for services and overall status of the economy and the budget situation. So as we go down, you'll notice the one agency here, Family Services, you'll notice that's in red. That's the only agency that requested less funds than it did in the previous year. But again, this will all be in the transmittal packet. All of these documents are currently online on the city's not Facebook page, our website, danvilleky.gov under the special meeting tab. So the subtotal last year was 199,300. I am only showing those agencies on here that requested funding this year that were either new this year or funded last year. Not listed here are agencies that are in your current fiscal year 2020 budget, but did not request funding this year, because obviously they're in your last year's budget. So you see the 38.1% increase. Then you see the boards, the airport board, they 15,000. So that was not projected. So you see the no funds over to the far right. The planning and zoning, in talking to Mr. Hunter, their director, we're reducing from 75,000 to 50,000. And then the EDP, which put in for the same 100,000 last year, currently held in abatement. So at this point, $50,000 is the only current based on the funding. But you see that the overall request from outside entities went from $389,300 to $465,174, or a 19.5% increase. The largest overall, you can look at percentages, but the reality is the Heart of Danville was the largest dollar amount, asking for $55,000, jumping to $104,674 for a 90.3% increase. But again, increases of small numbers can look large percentages, but it's really a dollar to dollar that's more important. So when you see the large jump, a lot of it is the dollars and cents.
David, I just wanted to jump in here really quickly. The Senior Citizens Center, that's usually considered a joint entity like the other, like the EDP and Planning and Zoning, right? No?
Your
No,
CFO
sir.
can jump in, but I'm advised otherwise, no.
I don't believe so, Commissioner. Those entities are ones that we have public agencies, and then public agencies that are, considered quasi-governmental or fulfill those governmental purposes. But the Senior Citizens Center is traditionally treated as a community agency, not as a joint public agency affair.
Okay.
All right. High level so that you understand what we've done and how we've done it because of the hemorrhaging revenues, if you will. On the general fund capital, again, when you get the document will actually be hand delivered to you all today, but it is available online, but I don't expect you to print it. That's why we're hand delivering the document right after the meeting. On the general fund capital, $560,000 for public works facility is borrowed funds. Borrowed means that we have debt service attached to that. And then the bonds on the fire department facility, again, that's borrowed money. So when you look at what appears to be revenue, it's not, it's borrowed money. So it's important when you're looking at year-to-year comparisons that you're taking into account the fact that you have this as debt money, although it has not been spent, we do have debt service on those funds. On municipal aid, You have budget in there, 500,000 for normal road paving. 125,000 is for the road behind Kroger and Applebee's. And these funds were transferred from the general fund to do the complete project this fiscal year. Again, most infrastructure projects are the ones that anything that we can put a hold on until we can get better finances is important, unless we already have the funds, gas tax money or otherwise. From the water treatment plant, there is right now, I previously submitted to the commission several weeks ago your enterprise funds. We're updating that 5-year, and we're going to pull in a couple more years. But it was obvious on some of the communications that transfers from the general fund to your enterprise fund is a quick signal to tell you that your enterprise funds in specific areas are upside down. So we are looking to for efficiencies, if you will, in the budgets across the board. So in balancing the budget, our municipal engineer had elected to eliminate one full-time position through attrition in the water treatment plant. And then you'll see account numbers that are actually broken out. What we've asked is that no longer do you just have very large, unspecific budget line items, meaning that if you have $100,000 in there for office supplies, we wanted that broken out so that there's more transparency as to how that money is spent and where it's going. No, there wasn't a $100,000 line item of office supplies, but that's just an example. Under water distribution, this department's expected to exceed the adopted fiscal year 2020 budget. Apparently, this has occurred for several years. And so we are making the department heads more knowledgeable of their budgets and more responsible for their budgets. And they're having to suggest all cuts well before they get to the city manager's desk. So in doing so, they have already identified some personnel expenses where they have 4 current or future retirements that are expected to occur between now and December 31st. And our municipal engineer is stating that 3 of those will be eliminated through attrition. And again, we have out one specific account into 3 areas so that there was a greater visibility into those line items. On the sewer treatment, same thing. We broke out a number of areas, nothing big to announce there. Sewer rehab, we most likely will have to revise this upward depending on where your rainfall, annual rainfall totals are. So that you understand that is that when you have I&I or intrusion into your sewer system because of rain and stormwater, it all goes to your wastewater treatment plant. And so although this is not sewage, it still comes in and we're still treating it. And so when those heavy rainfalls occur, all that water goes through our system. We then treat it. And so that's chemicals, that's operation of the plant. So that's why when it rains, it pours, so to speak. Under the utility non-departmental, again, this is one of the accounts that reimburses the general fund for the administrative, legal, and overhead costs. All of the newer bond issues were borrowed as general obligation or GO bonds. So that's because we were able to get cheaper financing through that route as opposed to the utility, because the utilities are upside down. Your enterprise funds are upside down for the most part. Under utility capital, we have 900,000 budgeted, which 500,000 is coming from USDA funds. $5 million reflects the KIA, or the Kentucky Infrastructure Authority loan to construct the Purville water tank on the Tuggle Road property that the city purchased. And $5 million is borrowed funds for that anticipated renovation and expansion of the city's sewer treatment plant. I will tell you that we are aggressively going after $5 million worth of the CARES Act to try to offset the cost of the infrastructure for the new wastewater treatment plant. And you see the $4 million in the 2021-22 budget that's got to be spent on infrastructure. So it cannot be used on operations. So that's restricted capital money. You'll see areas that are highlighted in yellow. This is where the heartburn sets in. These are these enterprise reports. And so obviously this is a recorded meeting. The public doesn't really understand necessarily general fund versus enterprise funds. General fund are your core governmental services, police, fire, financial administration, public works. Then you have enterprise funds, and enterprise funds are supposed to operate very much like businesses, and they're either to make a profit or break even. Those generally are your water, your sewer, your if you had electric, if you had natural gas, your sanitation services, your cemeteries, etc. Because they're supposed to break even or make a profit, they generally are able to transfer money to your general fund to offset the amount of taxes that people pay. Well, in this case, it's being done the opposite. We're actually taking the general fund tax money that is supposed to pay for core governmental services, and we're transferring and subsidizing the utility ratepayers. So that's where you see some of this red ink, if you will. So regarding the cemetery, obviously, back from day one, at every time a plot was sold, if that money was put into a perpetual care account and invested, who knows what return you would have. But I will tell you that most governments, if not all, actually just simply utilize that money as operational, and then they simply sustain these cemeteries on an ongoing basis. So the amount of revenue that comes in now for new grave sites or burials does not cover the cost of maintaining your cemeteries. So we have a transfer from your general fund, your governmental funds, of just over $250,000 to balance that budget. Your garbage operations, we anticipate a transfer of just over $43,000 in order to balance that. We plan to put that out for bid now that government's reopening and folks are starting to get back in their offices, so that and several other RFPs are about to hit the street. Parks and Rec. This is one that the city struck a deal with the county, and there was a 6 months transition period. So starting January 1st, the city has worked with the county and the independent Parks and Rec board and authority in order to bring that up under the city as an actual department of the city. Right now, that budget, there's been a lot of capital that has been deferred. When you look at the operation of Parks and Rec, their balance sheet at the end of every year has been less than $1,000. There is never anything left over, and there's always been more needs than there has been revenue to cover it. So in order to take in that operation, we will actually realize a transfer from the county based on the contract of $322,000. However, we'll have to transfer just over $637,000 from the general fund into Parks and Rec in order to balance that budget. And that's the actual cost of operating Parks and Rec. The angst here is that we don't know where these COVID-19 pandemic restrictions are going to go. And So there's almost daily conversations with the director of Parks and Rec. For instance, we know right now the pool's not going to open this season. And even if it did, it needs substantial repairs. It's been repaired every single year. And there's a very, very significant water leak that has to be addressed. The 4th of July fireworks, for instance, very well is going to be delayed. Most cities have been delaying that to Labor Day because there's great uncertainty now as to when we'll actually be able to have these gatherings and these outside events. So as I explained to folks, some decisions are day by day, some are on a week. Keep in mind, today is May 11th, and I'm presenting to you a proposed budget that would go into effect if adopted July 1st. But I anticipate even between then and the adoption, these numbers could substantially change. There's a lot of uncertainty. On the utility revenue side, I mentioned earlier unemployment and businesses that have shuttered their doors or throttled. We have looked at, since the pandemic started, where is our revenue and our liabilities and where are they growing? Where are we hemorrhaging? As of the end of April, our receivables are $408,679 higher than normal. And this figure will only grow with escalating unemployment as customers are unable to pay their utility bills. So this is the hemorrhaging directly to these enterprise funds, where historically we've been transferring money to make ends meet. Well, as this revenue is not materialized, as there's no fines, no fees, no payments, etc., this is ballooned to over $400,000 over and above where we normally would be on receivables. So this is a huge liability to us, and it's only growing. We also expect about $100,000 liability to the water and sewer revenues. However, our municipal utility engineer says that Springfield is due to come on during the fiscal year 21 budget, and we anticipate putting before the commission potential sewer rate increases to cover those costs. You're also, of course, borrowing that $4.9 million for the Perryville water tank on Tuggle Road. Your museum fund is transferring $26,105 from the general fund to balance budget. And last but not least, your parking fund is transferring $79,118 from the general fund to balance the budget. So these are your highlight overview of the budget. What we are disseminating and what is disseminated online is actually your capital budget.
Oops. Can I ask you a question?
Yes, in just a second.
Yeah, go back to that last page you had displayed. The highlight in the yellow. Yeah, right there. It says utility revenue. It says our receivables are 408,000 plus higher.
All
That
right.
means people that have not paid.
This is folks that owe us money over and above. So for instance, when we bill, let's say that we bill for $10, and we would expect to get $10 back. Well, now that $10 is more like almost $15, meaning that folks aren't paying their bills because they can't afford to. They have no income, they're unemployed. Businesses just are not materializing the revenue. We knew that we were going to see a red.
The word receivables just threw me for a loop.
Oh, payables is if I'm paying you.
All right.
Receivables is they need to pay us, the city.
All right. Well, that explains. That's not the way I was thinking. Okay.
Oh, okay.
All right.
It's okay. I had to go through counting 3 times because debits and credits mentally did not set well in my head. And it took 3 different professors to fix that block in my mental.
Okay. All right.
So I get it.
I'm good.
All right, so the full budget and the 5-year history is available online. If you go out to Danville, ky.gov, and you'll see the little link here, special called virtual meeting, and you will click on it. Everything that I just presented to you on this document is here, but you'll also see the much larger budget itself and then the 10-year forecast. These documents are being delivered directly to the commission members today in print form. A copy is available on display here at City Hall, and then the public is more than welcome to actually drop down and get a copy of these. The next steps is for us with the commission to actually start and have some budget meetings. And I anticipate, if all goes well, we anticipate City Hall being able to open for the commission to meet, not the general public. We still can't have that gathering because we can't social distance, but we anticipate the commission, although there's some ambiguous language. The governor has released a language as to all of how we can open City Hall, but the Kentucky League of Cities said, well, you sort of kind of forgot the whole part about the meeting restrictions. I figure if we're opening City Hall and we're able to follow those restrictions, we ought to be able to social distance with the commission and at least have you all gathered in the chambers, spread apart, so that we can start those meetings as early as the day after Memorial Day, which is in a couple weeks. So with that, we certainly can open up to questions, but it would make sense that you all get a copy of the budget, start to sort of glean through, start to formulate your questions, and then we'll schedule that next meeting to start looking at this. Most likely, I said on May 26th.
Sounds good to me. Clock appointment, I'm gonna scoot out to. Did you hear that?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, all right. Talk to you guys later.
All right, Mr.
Okay.
Mayor?
I'm on JH's heels. I got the same thing. So talk to everybody later.
Do we
Well,
just need to
in
adjourn?
that case-
We're losing quorum. We're losing quorum.
All right, I'll see.
I'd say adjourn.
That's okay.
Make a
Hey,
meeting.
guys, quorum, you can meet, as long as you don't take any action, you can meet with less than a quorum. You're just forbidden from taking any action. So commissioners can go ahead and meet their other appointments. And I believe this meeting's about to be adjourned anyhow, but I think the final touches can be put on it without a quorum present.
All right, thank you, sir.
So are we ready to adjourn?
Are there any additional questions? Any additional questions or comments?
No.
Hearing none, I think we should entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Terry. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Saris, I believe.
Yep.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. We are adjourned.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.